The signs are all there. The paper trail's there. Why is the media ignoring it? And we're back. Mike Cernovich, Cernovich.com, Cernovich.com, here with a disturbing message, a disturbing report about the Dayton, Ohio shooter. Now, I say it's disturbing because it took me a lot of time to process, a moment like this. So, by the way, what I'm about to say is not detracting from the tragedy. It was a terrorist attack, most likely. But one of the last messages or tweets that the Dayton, Ohio shooter had read was one falsely accusing me of a crime. So the Dayton, Ohio shooter may have been targeting me, and if I'd have been in his area, I have no doubt what would have happened to me. This is because a far left-wing activist accused me of being involved with the El Paso terrorist attack. And that's where we are right now. This is indisputable, by the way. I don't have my other setup to show you the tweets. But the tweets they're out there, they're public, they're archived. There was a lot of damage control going on, a lot of deleting of tweets, but we had absolutely just saved it all. So here's what I noticed, and this is one of the few times you'll ever have a real apples to apples comparison. There was a terrorist attack in El Paso by, I don't know what you call these people. Some people call them neo-Nazis. Some people call them white supremacist terrorists. Some people try to call them, far right. I don't know what the name is for these people. Whatever they are, they're evil. You can call them what you will, right? There's this weird, lefties always try to own me, and they'll come in and say, what about the El Paso? Yes, people that I don't like, who don't like me, within the messaging of the El Paso Manifesto mentioned race mixing, which my wife, in case you hadn't noticed, is not white as I am. So I would have been someone targeted potentially by the El Paso person. So you're not owning me. I have nothing to do with these people. I don't like them. So, but then the Dayton, Ohio shooting happens, and then we find his Twitter account. And the Twitter account was a poster child for far left wing. There was no, maybe he was down the middle. Maybe he was one of those people who reads and retweets everybody. No, he was a DSA fan, AOC fan, retweeting all these far left wing activists. He was as far left as you get, connected to Antifa. He may have been a member of Antifa. I was tipped off to some possibilities there. There was a tweet with him engaging with it's called the Socialist Gun Owners of America, and they were giving him firearms advice. That tweet's out there. There's thousands of tweets that show the path to radicalization of the Dayton, Ohio shooter. And the media, they have no interest in it. And I thought this was interesting. So I was tipped off early yesterday morning as to the Twitter account. What I do in these cases are I don't report on it, because then immediately the media will call it fake. They'll just lie and call it fake. So I don't report on it. I waited until other outlets did. And then a couple reputable outlets did. And then I waited for, who's read Sherlock Holmes? I waited for the dog to bark. Because when the dog doesn't bark, that tells me more than I need to know. Now, so yesterday, the Dayton, Ohio Twitter account became widely circulated. His tweets were widely circulated. The disinformation people didn't debunk it. That's the dog that didn't bark. They didn't say, oh, this is a fake Twitter account. This isn't a real Twitter account. No, they ignored it. They ignored it until this morning, when an NBC reporter went on the air and claimed that the left-wing Dayton, Ohio shooter, well, his politics were kind of all over the place. So the NBC confirmed that the Twitter account was real, but then they lied about the Twitter account. This is a far left-wing account. I have the tweets available. You can go to Cernovich.com, Cernovich. You can find them all. They're all right there. And that's not even all of them. There are hundreds more, and I have to get them all up. But I've been a little busy because I realized that I was targeted for assassination by a far left-wing activist. Oh, you're hyperbole. It isn't hyperbole. The Twitter, on Twitter, the Twitter account showed that the shooter had also targeted Jack Posobiec for assassination. Somebody had said, we need to crush these vile worms into the ground. And then the mass shooter, domestic terrorist Dayton, Ohio, liked that tweet. And then, we had this and everything. The FBI is aware. So the Twitter account threatening Posobiec, conspiring with the Dayton Ohio shooter, he disappeared. But you can't really disappear. The FBI has all this information and all the targeting to it. So I realize what is going on is that, we've always known this, but these are dog whistles. We know that they are trying to send unhinged people to target me by spreading false information, by spreading disinformation about El Paso. People go, what was that tweet about? Yeah, it was Ali and I had a conversation, and Ali said, Cernovich, I think El Paso is going to become like another Portland. And I was like, why? He said, well, there's that privately funded wall, and Antifa is going to go there September 1st. So I think there's going to be something happening in El Paso where people are going to go there and things are going to happen. And I was like, come on, man. El Paso? Nobody's going to go down to El Paso. And the shooting happened, and I was one of those like, wow, he just called me about this. And then I inartfully worded it, and nobody asked me for comment or what did you mean by this? They just said, they were part of it. Like, no, I wasn't. And if you had asked me, a couple of responsible journalists did, and they were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So disinformation was spread about me and Ali. And then that was one of the last messages, things that the Dayton, Ohio mass shooter read, in addition to the death threat that he had made in endorsing Shaq Posobiec. So people, feds are involved, and people have talked to the FBI and whatever. But so the question is, so I have to block somebody who's claiming this is a conspiracy theory. There's no conspiracy theory. The tweets are all there, right? This is this is not a theory, right? It's just never before have we had a more detailed encyclopedia into the mind of a mass terrorist as we had in the Dayton, Ohio. Because we've had manifestos, 3-4 pages printed out, but we can go back. The Dayton, Ohio terrorist, 225,000 Twitter likes. This was what you would call a very online person, part of weird Twitter, part of that whole Democrat socialist cliques, retweeting all the people who attack me and write smear pieces on me. That this is not a conspiracy theory. You can read it. We've never had a better insight into the mind of a terrorist. And the social media companies delete them. That's a bad policy, by the way. What do we gain by not being able to read and to study and to learn more about these people? It doesn't make any sense to me. So they deleted the accounts. And I'm just wondering why the media is pretending that the shooter wasn't far left wing. Why can't because he retweeted them all, right? That's why. It was massive, massive damage control. So a friend of mine wrote in, I've been watching CNN all day. Everything is on El Paso, nothing on Dayton. Interesting. So I don't watch, the Dirtbag Left. So the Dirtbag Left, by the way, Jack Posobiec's here. Who remembers when there was a mass shooting threat made against Trump DC at a MAGA meetup? Amazing how that got memory hold, right? So there was a death threat made against a MAGA meetup in DC. The Trump DC had to be evacuated. Police were there. And that was done by one of these Dirtbag Left, weird Twitter people. Charlie Kirk event had been threatened by another person in Chicago, had gotten arrested for that. I'm aware that due to corruption in Chicago, that person may have gotten away with it. The files on that are very, very hard to find. They just sort of disappeared. And there have been multiple instances of this. Now the problem is that there's been more violent attacks by Antifa, but they were in less intensity, right? So Antifa has tried to kill people, but they would use bike locks, and they would use knives. They would use all kinds of devices. But now they've leveled up, and now Antifa they are using guns. And there's people claiming that right now there's a mass counterattack by the media, who they're now claiming that I'm inciting harassment against them by reporting on their connections. Right? Isn't that interesting? So could you imagine if there was a mass shooter, domestic mass shooter, and that person had liked conservatives, Ben Shapiro, other people, and that Twitter account had just been nothing but retweets of Shapiro and Crowder and everybody else? You think the media would just shrug that off. Say, well, you can't read into likes. You can't read into retweets. Well, in fact, we have, this is empiricism, right? This is the way that we look at the world. When there was a shooter in Montreal, shot up a mosque, he committed a terrorist act against Muslims, the press blamed Ben Shapiro because the shooter had liked 14 of his tweets. So we know for a fact if there's a terrorist attack and the attacker, the terrorist, has read or liked or retweeted a conservative, we know that the media is going to call that online radicalization. We know that the media is going to blame whoever got liked or retweeted for the shooting, and they're going to call for deplatforming. We know this for a fact. This is not a priori knowledge. This is a posteriori. We know because we've seen it happen before. We now know then if a far left-wing, whatever, activist, whatever you want to call him, to me he seemed like an activist. He was an online activist. If they could retweet far left-wing accounts, if they like and share disinformation about me, if they threaten the life of Jack Posobiec, if they support Elizabeth Warren, then the media is going to pretend like it didn't happen. Just so it didn't happen, memory hole it. So there's been almost no coverage of Dayton, Ohio. And there's been saturation coverage of El Paso. And there's been, and by the way, I'll tell you what I really think is going on. I don't want to do conspiracy theories, so I will preface this with this is unfounded and being offered without evidence. So they're saying I'm spreading conspiracy theories. Actually not. It's called I'm thinking things about. I think the Dayton, Ohio shooter was a copycat. And here's what I mean by that. He was a far left-wing terrorist, but his attack was not far left-wing terrorism. Now, this is a distinction that the fake news media would never make, but this is the way complicated thinkers look at the world. The shooter was clearly far left-wing. There's no debate about that. But he went on a random kill spree. And there's a concept called suicide contagion. So when one person commits suicide and that becomes publicized, suicides will spike. And that's why a lot of people say you shouldn't publicize suicide because it idealizes it. A lot of people are mentally ill, idealize it, and it's called suicide contagion. So I believe that the Dayton, Ohio shooting was a mass shooting contagion with all the hysteria. So imagine because for us it's hard to understand. We're more rational, we're more calm. We, tend to have families. We tend to be connected to our community. We tend to go to church or, temple or mosque. And for us, it's hard to relate, but imagine you're just some frenzied far left-wing person who lives on media propaganda. So if you have to look at how people view the world. So the person goes, why kill his sister? Well, that's because, as I mean, it's just contagion. His mind broke. You have to realize, for us, we can't relate to this. But you have to understand the filter that other people have about the world. There are millions of people, tens of millions of people, who believe that Trump is Hitler, who believe that children are being kept in concentration camps, and that there are white supremacist KKK people, 50 million of white supremacist KKK people, and then MAGA has a KKK symbol. And you can say, well, that's absurd, isn't true. How can, if you've learned nothing from me, the only thing you ever take away from anything we've ever talked about is just because something is not objectively true doesn't mean it's not true to the person. This is a concept conservatives and other people really can't seem to get is it might not be true, but if it's true to them, then it may as well be true. So people, tens of millions of people have been robotically and systemically programmed through media propaganda to believe that there are 50 or 60 million people in the U.S. who are Nazis and that there's going to be another Holocaust. That's how they've been programmed. So they're wound up. They're wound up tight. And then they're living online and they're left wing echo chamber and they read about the El Paso shooting and they, the people like me are being blamed, other people are being falsely blamed, disinformation, but they believe it. And then their minds break. They spin out of control and then he goes on a rampage shooting. Because that's why there's a difference between the attack in the Washington ICE office and the attack in Dayton, Ohio. The Washington ICE attack was terrorism because it was a well-planned, orchestrated attack designed to initiate political violence. It was a violent attack with a political or religious end. The attack by the Dayton, Ohio shooter, even though it was far left, it was just a killing spree. Now, if you're dead, if your family suffered, does it really matter if it's a killing spree or terrorism? No, and I don't mean to be too clinical about these, but we need people to just talk about these issues like adults and to be very sane and nuanced and not freaking out and frenzied. So if you notice for me, I don't try to freak you guys out when you watch Periscopes, right? I don't, even though I could legally and ethically, I could try to wind you people up, right? I don't do that. When you see a Periscope from me after a shooting or like today even, you see that it's very calm and sober. I'm not saying they're coming for you. They're gonna attack you. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do that. You gotta, because I don't want anybody being in a frenzied state of mind. I want everybody very grounded, focused, purposeful, clear-minded. And I know that by creating an us against them hysteria, that the environment is not going to get better, and people need to be adults, and people need to be more grounded, and people need to be purposeful, and people need to not let the bad actors on both sides spin you up, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to spin you up. So this guy in Dayton, Ohio, his brain, he's just being spun up, right? He's just being spun up and freaking out, hysterical, doesn't really know anything. And then something inside him breaks. Something inside him breaks. And that's what I think we saw. So that's what it means, like contagion. Just like there's suicide contagion, there's also mass shooting contagion. And that's why people, you see people lose it in a microcosm, but they lose it with words. So the left, oh, they're all Nazis, they're all attackers. And then the right, what about Chicago? What about this? And nobody's really providing guidance and leadership. I mean, it's up to us to do that. And for us to try to calm down, and for us to mediate and to meditate on police. And, there's bots too, people trying to claim that I'm lying about the connections people have to Antifa and everything. And it's just there. And today, for example, the Trump said what the media wanted him to say. It's not good enough, right? Trump said, hey, you want me to, I'm doing it. And he does it, and that's not enough because they don't want peace, right? They want people spun up. They want us against them. Why? Ratings? Sociopathy? What is it that makes them want, I don't want people hysterical. I don't want my side hysterical. When people watch me, I want them edified and clear-minded. That doesn't mean cowardly. I don't think anybody could legitimately call me a coward. I'm in public all the time. People make death threats against me. I make public all the time. Death threats against my family. Stalk my family, harass my family for years. This has been a years-long campaign. And I remain calm and focused all the time. So I don't want anybody having panic attacks, freaking out. But the left, they have everyone panicking and freaking out all the time. And this is what it's creating. This is the rhetoric of the left. And they're not taking any ownership of that. They're not asking if they're creating a climate of hysteria, climate of paranoia, a climate where people can maybe rationalize, because they want to rationalize, right? Maybe where people can rationalize taking bad actions. Because if the media's told you, oh, there's Hitler, would you kill baby Hitler? What would you do to stop Hitler, right? Then how many more steps does it take for that person in their own mind to make that connection, right? That's why people go, oh, Trump calls media the enemy of the people. I'm like, I don't though, I don't call the press the enemy of the people, right? Because there's too many insane people. Now somebody's going to try to clip that and say Cernovich is saying Trump shouldn't or whatever. I'm just telling you that with my look of the information landscape, it doesn't do any good for somebody who's like me, powerful, influential person to say things like that. But I do believe in calling out the media for their fake news. I do believe in calling out the media for radicalizing the Dayton Ohio shooter. And I do believe reporters need to do soul searching. And they need to ask, are they contributing to a climate of hysteria, a climate of panic, a climate of fear, a climate of violence? Or are they trying to create a climate of calmness Measured assurance. That's weird. Something weird is going on outside. I'll talk to you later. Mike Cernovich. I got to go see what's going on. Mike Cernovich, Cernovich.com, Cernovich. There's some kind of drone or something going on. I don't know. It's quite weird. Mike Cernovich, Cernovich.com. Keep the peace.